It was a all-black neighborhood and area. When we walked out the door, to the left or to the right, there were blacks living in next door in either direction. Black businesses, black everything. And I like that because it made me grow up who I am.
Yeah.
You know, we didn't have any white people there to tell us what we need to do, at least tell my mother or father what they need to do. We didn't have that. And I just liked the idea that it was an all-black neighborhood. And, you know, it helped me out a whole lot as of today. We had our own little stores, and we didn't need the white people's stores. We didn't need the white people's restaurants because we had our own. We didn't need the white people's nightclubs because we had our own. And all of them was good. We had our own schools. The people that went to school there, they turned out to be taught by people who were well educated. Well educated. I don't know, it's just a thing that I'm glad I was brought up in that area. Here I have a deed of my grandparents' property. The property was located at 36 in Magnolia, and it's a deed was back in I think 1800s, I think. And I was told by people that were older than I were that as far as they knew, my foreparents were the first to settle down in that area, as far as they knew. Mm-hmm. And I kind of believe that. Because, see, back then, blacks were not allowed to buy property. So it looked like to me it was right at the verge of letting them buy property. The deed shows, that's what it looked like to me. As far as I knew, it was at 34th Street East going west, to the fairgrounds, the old state fairgrounds. See, the state fairgrounds I consider was in Little Africa also. And then from the north of Kirby Avenue all the way to Algonga Parkway was the other boundary. Now that's been verified by people that were older than me, that those were the boundaries. They've dismantled everything there because there's new homes there, and they've even changed the name to Russell. I don't know how they did that or who did that, but it wasn't Russell area, because as far as I know, the city regarded that Little Africa as a second-hand area. You know, it didn't regard it as first class or on first name basis. They regarded Little Africa as a second-hand basis. Unless you lived that back then and you go back now and look at it, because I was there a few years ago and the boundaries have all been torn down. And just a catchphrase, I guess, because I don't know the origin of that, and I would assume that the reason it was called Little Africa was because it was all black area. Mm-hmm. You know, and people come from further deep south and other places to move there. Well, it depends, you know, I mean, as far as I know, the Breckenridges were. And, you know, I know the names of the people that looked like they had some kind of insight or power, like the Hayeses. As a matter of fact, the old Dreamland, that belonged to the Hayeses. And Richard Carter started the Club 36 there. And matter of fact, we didn't live far from there. We lived within the area. And it seemed like to me that it was a center point of all the happenings there. So we had Barbecue House, F&F, Frazier, Ted Frazier, Charles Frazier, the Fraziers, and we had Frazier gas station. So everything seemed like it was centralized right around there. It was right on the tracks. I mean, right adjacent to the track. The Dreamland, Club 36, Fraser Service Station, all of them was right in the vicinity. A lot of them were built as I grew up. You know, it's a thing where that most people, they call it second-hand construction, but they did build their houses. Now there's a couple of houses that floated in from the flood, to my understanding, the 37 flood. And to my understanding, I remember two of the houses, the Smizers lived in it, in two of those houses. They said they was evidently brought there by the floods. And matter of fact, a lot of the fruits, trees, and a lot of the vegetables grew up there, and they said it was because the flood pushed the seeds in there. And so, you know, we had a lot of good fruit trees, a lot of vegetables that grew up there, and nobody seemed to know other than the flood. No, most of the people that moved there came from further deep south, like Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia. I remember them moving in. People would talk about it, said, you know, they came from Alabama, or they came from Mississippi. Some of the people, see, there wasn't too much land or housing for black people back then. So they had to settle there. Or they settled Black Hill, they settled Fort Hill, you know, and some other places. Oh, I mean, I don't know about miles drive. It probably was about 20 minutes, 25 minutes. Okay. Yeah, you couldn't walk it. It's too far to walk. Yeah, people would come to each neighborhood, from each neighborhood, and family members. You know, you didn't have a hard time finding out where people lived, family members, because they lived in those areas. The teachers came from different sections of Louisville. You know, like I know some teachers that came from Fort Hill there. I knew that most of the teachers were in the Little Africa area or Louisville area, but I don't remember any teachers that came from the tire plant there. And I don't remember any teachers from Lebanon or Black Hill. I don't remember any teachers coming from there. Black Hill didn't have their own schools. They had schools adjacent or pretty close to them. I don't remember any schools. I think there was Mary B. Tyler School, I think, that a lot of people went, a lot from Black Hill went there, I think. We had to walk to school, Virginia Avenue School, at 36 in Virginia. And there was a baseball club, which called the Hilltoppers, that came from Little Africa too. They had a lot of games played down on Magnolia, 36 Magnolia. They had some played at 36 Virginia at the ball field at Virginia Avenue Baptist Church. Muhammad Ali, Cassius Clay, he didn't come over there though, but he didn't live too far. He went to the same school I went to, Virginia Avenue. We had one school, Parkland Elementary School back then, but no, they wasn't directly. They was adjacent to Little Africa, you know. And anybody that lived down in Little Africa, that's where they went to, Virginia Avenue. And the principal named Mr. Liggins, and I remember Mr. Mudd, he was a teacher. And a lot of those names, you know, people would never know. Miss McQuinney and Miss Wilson. I never forget Miss Wilson hit me in the back because I did something. I think I had tripped a girl or something. And she asked me why did I do it. And so I never forget she hit me in the back. And who else was that? There was Miss Black. Those teachers there, man, they were some good teachers. They were good teachers. They made sure you learned. That's how I learned about the Mormons from Africa. I learned that in school. Those are some good teachers. Well, you take like Mr. Fields, Lacomas Fields, and Miss Lizzie, his wife, Miss Lizzie Fields. They live next door. Yeah, they live next door to us in Little Africa on 36th Street. And matter of fact, he was the one that taught me to read a scripture from the Bible that I always memorized, and I started saying it up until I was about 19 or 20 years old. I never did go to sleep unless I repeated it. I learned it verbatim. There was another man on the other side. His name was Mr. Jackson and Miss Lucy Jackson. But But there's so many people. I've got a list of the names of the people that live there, and in Little Africa, like Cousin Bill Wheeler. He lived across the street from us, and he taught me a lot. Taught me how to drive, taught me how to hunt. He just taught me how to fish. He just taught me a whole lot in my lifetime, for my lifetime. But Mr. Fields and Miss Lizzie they were, anytime I looked like I was going to get a spanking from Mama, I'd run next door. And they would say, May, he gonna do better, you know. And a lot of times, you know, they just took over me. I didn't do a whole lot of different things because I always thought I was close to Jesus. I always thought that. And I couldn't understand, you know, why I would get a whooping sometimes. And the same thing with people in Black Hill. There was a few people there. Miss Alene, and their names would never be mentioned. Miss Alene and Louis Maxwell, I guess his name would be mentioned. And my grandmother and them, they should cook, and they would always call me. And they said, "How, Junior?" I'd hear them, you know, and I'd have to run across the street, and she'd be sitting there beating, cook some pork chops and gravy, and biscuits be standing tall, and she'd sit there while I ate. Her and Helen Mosby, which was my auntie, my daddy's sister. All those people took care of me. And once I look back on it now, it was something about me, my life, that was kind of different, I guess, because I never did run into a whole lot of problems. I always went to church, and I loved going to church. You know, some of my friends didn't go. The pastor was Reverend O.D. Jackson and his wife, Miss Jackson, at Pleasant View Baptist Church. That's Brother Donald Franklin and his wife, Miss Magdalene Franklin. They were all those people, and Reverend Charles Young and his wife, Miss Eleanor. They were always there to help young people, and they taught. They didn't, you know, those people there. You didn't think about doing anything bad because they was teaching good, and the way we were brought up, it made us who we are or who we became. We loved the church. That was like the Bakers. They lived across the street from me. Doug and Junior Baker, they lived across the street from me. Mr. Fields lived next door, him and his wife. Mr. Jackson lived on the other side next door to me. And Miss Lucy Jackson, his wife. The Sneeds, Cousin Bill Wheeler. Pretty much a lot of kids, you know, all those kids down there. I have a list of the names of the kids that lived there. Toady Monam and the Boards, which Toady Mo was a board. And I seen them every day, just about. Pretty much seen everybody just about every day. Going to the store. James White, he was one of my best friends. He lived not too far from me. We played together all the time and did a whole lot of things together. Hunted with our BB guns. We had BB guns back then. And went to school together. And one thing about White, he would stop by in the mornings when it's time to go to school. He'd stop by and he'd holler for me at the front. He never would come in the house. And we walked down to Duval Junior High School, and we stopped by and get a little Mary Jane's and Baby Ruth's candy and at the Baker store. And you know, that's about it. My mother was one of the seamsters, Miss Cleesta Rhodes. She was another one I remember. There was some other people that did some clothing there, you know, for kids and things like that, but they was always sewing, doing something like that. And I remember Mr. Sims, he you know, like I said, he gave us credit, gave my mother and them credit for food and stuff like that. Sims was a grocery store. He lived on top of the grocery store. They had a 2-story building there. And the rock and roll singer Wilson Pickett, his sister lived down in Little Africa too. And her and her husband. It took me a while to know that they lived down there. I seen her all the time, but I didn't know it was his sister at the time. Went to church, Immaculate Catholic Church, and the first black disc jockey, radio, Mr. Jimmy Hughes, he lived down in Little Africa off of Magnolia. He was on WLOU, because WLOU was the only station that we were getting. There was Tobe Howard, there was Cliff Butler, and at nighttime we would always listen to Randy Record Shop on radio. And he always came on with Shooby Dooby Doo, Babu Day, this is a Jive Horse Man on his way. It was a very popular radio station back then out of Randy's. And then, we all tried to sing. When Frankie Lyman and the teenagers come out, that's what started me wanting to sing. Because when they came on the scene, everything just went wild. How Frankie Lyman would sing. They were young cats, and so I tried to organize a group myself, which I did. And that's what started me to start singing, was Frankie Lyman. I think I was a year older than him, I think. Then they had the Skylighters, Junior Boy and them, that's what they called them. And they had a group, and their group was out of sight, And then Julie Bass, they came down there a lot. Fishback, they all had groups. It was a group thing then. Everybody was trying to sing. Because I had seen that our foreparents were doing that hard labor and we didn't want to do it. So we thought we'd make a record. We'd make it, Bright's Apothecary. That's where we got our medicines from. We had a dentist there, Dr. Biggerstaff. He was there, and Dr. Maxwell was a house to house. He come by and if you had some kind of problem, being sick or something, Dr. Maxwell, he would come by. I don't remember a bakery back then, because we used to go to 28th and Dumonier for a bakery. There was a bakery there, a white section. We go there and get a bakery, day-old donuts or whatever. That's where we get those. But in 28th and Dumonier was like a little shopping area, like downtown Louisville. You could get a lot of things there too. But we didn't have any bakeries. The only bakery we had was our parents doing a lot of baking and stuff like that. They were cooks at the Dreamland. Ain't Sooknam was seamstress too. And then they did a whole lot of Ain't Vi and Ain't Sooknam. They did a whole lot of laundry work for white people. Yeah, they did that. They'd get it from them and take it to them. The same way on Black Hill, around the corner where the whites lived at, you just couldn't go in that area. So the blacks was a servant to the whites, and I forget what they called that community then, but that's where all rich white people lived at then. Matter of fact, one of the DuPont founders' sisters lived around there at one time. That was at Cecil and Greenwood, and I quit too. I did some pharmacy runs because I didn't have no license. I couldn't drive the little Jeep they had. I was about 16, 17, but I couldn't, and so in the wintertime, man, it was hard. They had to walk from a Zigger drugstore at Cecil and Greenwood all the way to Shawnee Drive and places like that to carry some prescription. And so it was at one time, it was real cold. I did that, and then I got back, and they said, "Brack, we got some more to go down there." I said, "Okay." But I did that, and when I got back, I said, "You'll never see me no more." No, I didn't want to work at Mr. Zigard. He had a partner, I forget his name now, but Zigard Drugstore. You had King and Joe was two white guys, but you very seldom seen them. They didn't have it. No, they didn't have that. And Mr. Scotty Brock had a little place where on the weekends where it was entertainment for us, where we danced, and in a jukebox in there. I think he lived in the back, but that's where all the teenagers went back then. On Friday or Saturday, they would go to Scotty Brock's. We call it Scotty's place. That's where we would go to have fun about dancing, meeting girls and stuff like that. But there's a lot of misconception that I had back then. I thought we all had to marry somebody in that area. I never did think we had to marry somebody out of that area. I don't know why. You find a lot of times other kids from other areas would come down there, but when they come down there, they had to be right, because these cats would run them out of there. It was a tent skating rink down there. Some white people put together, but it was real nice. And we all went there and skate. Had wood floors, and it was real nice. Black Hill, that's where a lot of my people were from on mama's side. the tire plant, I would go out there and see my cousin Hazel when I could. And Mama didn't know I was going over there. And Fort Hill, I didn't hardly go in Fort Hill. You know, you had guys, if you went to Fort Hill, they would try to run you out, and if you came down in Little Africa, we'd try to run you out. So the tire plant was tough. If somebody got killed there on Friday night, then the police or nobody could come down there until the next day, and they had to check with the Bond brothers, let them know they were coming there to investigate or take them away or something like that. But tire plant was real tough. You know, all those places were pretty tough though. You know, Little Africa was there; they were tough too. The tire plant didn't survive either. Okay. They didn't survive. The Little Africa survived longer. Let's see, Little Africa and Black Hill, they survived pretty. Well, Fort Hill, they all survived pretty long. As a matter of fact, Fort Hill, the area is still there. I have videos of that. I forget. I think they may have changed that name too. But now, Little Africa was called Russell area, which I don't know why and who changed that. I don't know who did that. And Black Hill, there's no more Black Hill. You know, there was only one street in Black Hill, but it was a long street, and a lot of people lived on both sides of the street, and they lived in houses in the alley. And so Black Hill was another popular place, you know, but you didn't find a lot of fighting that I know of there, and like it was in those other areas. Yeah, Little Africa was larger than any of them, you know, any of those places. It was a black community that the white fathers didn't want to see survive, you know, because they had no control. No, they had no banks, and see, the banks, they would loan black people money to buy cars because they know they could repossess them. But as far as housing and fixing up the houses, they didn't loan money for that. And I didn't learn that until I started working at the bank. Well, Africa demolished when I got out of school and I went to Cleveland, Ohio to live. That was about 1961 or something like that. You know, I went to Cleveland, Ohio once I got out of school. Back then, they had what they call redlining, and the government, I guess, set that. And I remember when I first heard about it, it was at a meeting, and I was at the bank, and they said the red line was that you couldn't loan money to anybody beyond that line, which included, I was looking at the map, which included where we live. I said, oh man, I didn't know that. They just didn't loan money to people back then. Let's say buying a car. When the urban renewal decided to come in, I don't know who started that, but the urban renewal decided to come in and take the property, eminent domain, I think it was. And there was a man named Mr. Dunlap, and he was a black man who worked for urban renewal, who come down there, try to talk people in selling their houses. And he did a job on some of them. But see, the people really didn't understand that once they sold their houses to get new housing, the new housing was they going to have to buy from white people, and white people were charging them more, and they couldn't make those payments. But I never did care for him every time I seen him. But they did talk about him a whole lot. They talked about the urban renewal a whole lot back then. And then as I got grown, I became one of the commissioners for the Housing Authority, Jefferson County Housing Authority, appointed by Judge Todd Hollenbeck. I'll never forget in one meeting, they was talking about tearing down a neighborhood and moving the people to Newburgh area. And I spoke up then. I said, you know, that's the same way y'all did us. I'm talking about y'all. I'm talking about white people. The way y'all did us. I was glad to make that statement. And I've been making statements down through the years from time to time and fighting for justice for black and brown people. That's been my life. Yeah, I seen that. And I didn't like that. I didn't like it. And I spoke up a whole lot about it. When I was at the bank, I spoke up about it. See, because it's like, when we went to school, if I had a hole in my shoe, I knew that there's a whole lot of them had holes in their shoes, and putting that cardboard in their shoes, because that's where we were. But it didn't bother us too much. It didn't bother us too much about the clothing, because we had pretty good clothing. I learned a whole lot when I was at the bank, I learned a whole lot from the clients. As a matter of fact, Mr. Isidore Klein, I sat with him every day after I got some training, and we talked, and I learned a whole lot how they came about having the problems they had. And when I got at DuPont was something else, because they were giving white people things they wasn't giving blacks. Like, we worked in where the chemicals were, and they give white people acid-proof clothing, steel-toe shoes, and stuff like that. And I think I got a CD with one of the guys that was working there before I was, and I got you on it with him talking, and he's saying that Brack didn't like that kind of stuff where we he would just speak up stuff he didn't like, and I did, just like they had a position open for a security guard. I applied for it, and they said that I would be the well qualified for it. And I never forget, because some of the questions they asked me in the interview, what would you do if a white man called you a nigger and spit on you and this and that? And I was saying, I would report him. But I was saying myself, I'd try to knock the hell out of him, And I never forget, one of my friends one day came to me and said, "Bro, Brack, you ain't gonna be no security guard." I said, "Because somebody else is down there at the gate." And he said, "You can take my scooter and ride down there and see." And I rode down there and seen he was. So I asked him, I said, I came back and I asked him, I said, well, I thought I was supposed to get that position. And they told me that he was a bus driver and he met more people than I would have met. And so that he got the position. But I was so fired up, and I didn't take nothing off of nobody. Yeah, I would speak up. But it didn't make no difference. I would speak up. Wherever I was, I would speak up. And to this day, I still speak up. Yeah, in Little Africa, yeah. But see, Mama taught us, and I thought about this yesterday. Taught me rather. Don't never hold your head down. You ain't got nothing to look down for. Keep your head up. And I always listen to what Mama would tell me. And that's where I felt. And don't be scared of nobody. And I feel that way today. I never was scared of nobody. There's some boys that that I know would tag me or whatever, but they had no problem with them. The riot, yeah. As a matter of fact, the riot in Louisville, I forget what years, in the 70s, I think. But anyway, and see how the riot come about that I know of is that there was Dobie, a boy named Dobie, I think his name was McKenzie, there's Bill Gatewood, Bob Smiley, myself, and one or two other people. We was always talking about how, why white people had establishment in our communities. And we was talking about how we was going to take over and run them out. And so I got fired down at DuPont, and I got fired illegally, and I won my case, and I had to go back to DuPont. I didn't have to go back, but Reverend Shoemake and some of the other older fellas said, "Go back, Brack." And I went back. I never forget that night. They put me on night shift, and I never forget, I got a notification from somebody from the outside, said the riot's been started. And so I said, dang, I didn't think they were going to start a riot this quick. And so anyway, I got off from work and I went down there and seen it. And even, to make a long story short, when they tried to stop the riots, they called me, Bill Gatewood, Bob Smiley, they called us all in to talk with us to try to see what they could do about it. Chief Hyde. But I come find out that Chief Hyde and my uncle Jess Lee was just as crooked as I don't know what. The riots did stop. And that's when I started working at the bank. Because a friend of mine came and said, "Man, you ought to try the bank." I said, "I don't want to work in no bank." But I said, after I couldn't find it, because they said they had me blackballed. And I would never get a job. And I didn't doubt that, because I went to so many, I had a list, and probably still got it, 50 or 60 some places trying to get a job. Nobody would hire me, and they said I was blackballed. So anyway, I said, I'll try the bank, and I went there, And right then they said they would hire me, and I still didn't want the job. So I told them, I said, I'm gonna have to come back in a week or something like that. And so I did, and I went on and started working. And I never forget. I don't know if this is the thing that pushed me further. There was a black guy shaking a white guy head against the glass, plate glass window down the 4th and Chestnut, the 4th and Walnut. And so I looked and I seen him, and everybody was running to the window, and people were looking across the street. And I just took on my own. I went out there. I said, "Hey, brother," I said, "let him go, man. Let him go." I said, "You don't want to get yourself in trouble with this guy here." And I was able to talk with him, and so I never forget the white guy kind of drooped down. I thought he was getting ready to have a heart attack or something. And I told the brother, I said, "Let him go, man. Let him go." And he let him go. And then after the police, they came, because they was standing for off too. They came over and started talking to them and me. And the next few days or a week, they said they want to see me at the main office of the bank. And that's when I started in the management program. I don't know if that was the cause of it, but it sure seemed like it. Yeah, it was. I mean, I learned a lot. Mr. Klein and they had an interest in me. I hated to quit, but I quit after I was there for a while. I just quit. Because I was going to run for state representative. And they said, "No, you don't need to do that right now." And I said, "Nobody don't tell me what to do." And that's why I said to myself, and I wrote a letter. Went back to my desk and wrote a letter. I still got the letter. I never did hand it to them. And I just went on quitting. They took me in the office and tried to talk me into staying, but I said, "No, I'd rather go and leave." I left. Oh yeah, ain't no doubt about that. Ain't no doubt about that. And it gave me a lot of confidence too, though. Them clients, they were all right. Well, I wish it'd be remembered as a black area, black neighborhood that survived without any white support. That's why I wish it would be thought of too. And people that was educated, they were there. Like Lee Callan, he became a pro football player. The Gillum, he was a great artist, in which they still got information on him. And Eugene Tucker, I forget what he did, but And then a lot of people like J.W. Turner was a contractor. My dad, he taught me a whole lot. There's some difference in our ages, my sister's ages and mine. So I knew a lot that they didn't know, and I don't know. To me, I don't guess they tried to learn what he did. But my dad, he taught me a whole lot. He taught me the work ethics. And Cousin Bill taught me a lot of stuff too. The taking up for myself. Old Bob Smiles, I learned a lot from him too. So he didn't take nothing off nobody. And Corky Baker, he was another guy that should be remembered. Mickey Baker, his brother, Duke Winburn. There's a lot of people down there should be remembered. And I have a list of them. Because see, they wouldn't survive if they didn't depend on each other. They depended on each other, And there wasn't a whole lot of falling out and stuff like that, It just wasn't there. There wasn't no main entry. I mean, you come through Southern or you come through 36th Street, but there wasn't no main entry. 36th Street was a long street, and Southern was a long street. 37th, there were long streets. They always long streets. Miss Mary Harris, they lived on Magnolia, had a big old garden in the back. I still talk with her. Her I guess that's her daughter, I guess. She's still living as far as I know. And I never forget my sister Alberta. She you could take a caterpillar and run her way across the world. She was so scared of them, And she and I got along real well, Mr. Jackson and Mr. Fielding had the first person I knew had a phone, because I had a girl named George Jackson, and the girlfriend I met at Madison Junior High, and I'd have her to call there, But George Jackson, yeah, but Mr. Fields and them had the phone, a party line. See, back then they had party line. Mr. Jackson, Lucy Jackson on the other side of our house. Yeah, we looked through the window. And I remember also we had those green shades, which I think it was during the Korean War or something like that. They said that the green shades at night, you couldn't see no light, and the plane fly over, they couldn't see nobody down there. And like I said, I don't know how all them vegetables and things got there. I just don't know how. But we had plenty of them, man. The plums and grapes, and we just had plenty of fruit. You know, you really didn't have to buy a whole lot. Cause we had them, and they were juicy plums and grapes and stuff like that, apples. We had all that stuff. Well, I'd say from 19, maybe 1900 till the 60s, early 60s. I was worried that my mother and them had moved out of there. And when I came back and seen it, you know, that's when I began to believe that it was being dismantled. There's so much I can remember, and I hope it never be forgotten. But I guess, you know, some people are interested, some are not. By talking to me more and more, I can come up with more and more. So, but that's about all I'd like to say.